messages. So yes,
Just
since we're on,
message,
yeah,
single
so
entity,
yeah, it's just a single message, and a
hmm
chat will have a collection of messages,
collection
right?
of messages, exactly.
That makes sense. So yeah, since we're on the topic of messages, I was having this conversation a few days ago,
Mm.
just trying to compare Instagram and YouTube, because Instagram has like a messaging feature, but YouTube doesn't. So I was thinking, which one do you think is a bigger platform? Not necessarily a
Hmm.
bigger company, because obviously Google is technically a bigger company than Facebook.
Right.
I don't think it should be though, but it is as of today. But as far as those two platforms, Facebook or Instagram specifically
Hmm.
versus YouTube, which one do you think it's a bigger platform or bigger company if they were independent companies,
Yeah.
and why?
It's so tempting to say Instagram, um,
Hmm.
just because uh, I feel like maybe in terms of like in terms of raw amount of users, I'd say YouTube. Um,
Okay.
Simply because like I've had a YouTube account. Well, first of all, Google, right? If you have a
Hmm.
Gmail account, you have a YouTube account, right? That's kind of
Hmm.
a bit cheat codes, but that's how it is, right? Uh, but I've had a YouTube account for years, but I only recently created the Instagram account that I use now, and that's like my personal one, like maybe in 2020, right? So I
Hmm.
just very recently, and that's simply just because of the type of person I am. I
Exactly.
had a lot of anxiety about getting on social media, et cetera, right? But the point I'm making with that is that, the way YouTube is set up, it's more. I feel like it's more welcoming of all different kind of people, types of people, because
Hmm.
the focus is on necessarily the content, and it's not necessarily because with Instagram it's more so there's the expectation that the norm is like everybody posts, right?
Hmm.
That's how you interact, et cetera, et cetera. But with YouTube it's more so, okay, just people watching. And I also
Hmm.
think that the amount of content that YouTube has versus Instagram's content is pretty much redundant. It's just pictures of people um you know doing whatever. But YouTube has content on so many things, like from like gaming, like Instagram does almost nothing to capture the gaming industry, which is gigantic. But
Hmm.
YouTube does capture the gaming industry, because of the way it is, and hair and makeup. I guess maybe Instagram can capture hair and makeup.
Instagram
Um,
captures beauty more, I think.
yeah,
The
I'd
beauty industry is
say
more Instagram than anything.
I agree. I agree that is true. Um, but I just feel like YouTube also has, the capability of getting some of those people.
Hmm.
The basic point is like I feel like YouTube has more reach in terms of like the kind of content that it can curate and the kind of people that it can bring along. So I
Hmm.
think it's the bigger platform. What was your thought?
At first, my answer was YouTube, because I was just going off me and people around me. What do they use more? I use YouTube way more. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I use YouTube at least 5 hours a day. Just studying and learning from YouTube. I think YouTube is the greatest university ever created. But then after looking deeply into it, I think I decided Instagram was much bigger than YouTube. And here's why. The most followed account on Instagram
Mm-hmm.
has almost twice the most subscribed account on YouTube. So Cristiano
Wow.
Ronaldo has almost 400 million subscribers, 380. The most subscribed account on YouTube has only 200 million. That's one. I feel like Instagram, everybody contributes to it, but YouTube has is broken into two. There's creators and there's consumers. Creators are like maybe 1 or 2% of the entire population of YouTube. Just by virtue of that alone, there's less activity on YouTube than Instagram. Instagram is anybody that buys a cake is posting the cake. Anybody that
Right.
is in the gym is posting their workout. Anybody that buys a clothes that looks okay is posting that. Anybody that does anything that they think is anything is posting it. Anybody at the lake is posting. So I feel like Instagram is more has more users, gives the company a chance to get more data on its users because we're going into an age where data is the new oil.
True.
Data is the most valuable commodity on earth now. No longer oil, no longer gold, is data right now. So Instagram knows where you are, knows what you had for breakfast because you probably posted it because you thought it was cool, knows what workouts you like to do in the gym because you probably posted it because you thought it was cool. Knows who your friends are, who you're hanging out with, knows what they bought, so it knows how to recommend things for you to buy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I think Instagram is much bigger than YouTube. But again, I used I use YouTube at least 10 times more than I use Instagram. So I think if you ask a very productive, goal-oriented person, they will say YouTube. They'll say they use YouTube more. But if you walk on the street and pick a random person and ask, I think more people would say Instagram. More of the regular people would say
Yeah.
Instagram. I just look back to almost every girl I dated, which one they use more. And I think they use Instagram a lot more than YouTube. But
Hmm.
speaking for myself and most of the productive people I've met around work and school, they all use YouTube more.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think you pointed out a good an interesting point. And I'm not a social scientist. I'm not saying this is fact, but in my opinion, I think that just with women in general, I think Instagram is more geared
Exactly.
toward like allowing them to post content and support, or et cetera,
Exactly.
et cetera. Whereas I feel like I've heard in the past that YouTube in general scales more male. Is that the right word? Scales?
Yeah, I agree.
Skew,
Like
rather
a YouTube channel,
skews.
100% of the people are
Yeah,
male.
yeah.
Yeah. On
I've
them.
heard that YouTube scales skews more male.
On male. Yeah.
So yeah, that also
So,
plays a
and
factor.
also, if you think about it, I had a friend who just opened a restaurant a few months ago.
Hmm.
Almost every business has an Instagram profile, but businesses
That's
typically
true.
don't have a
Have
YouTube
a
profile.
YouTube
So
account. Yeah,
almost every business I see, they list their Instagram on their
that's
number,
true.
their email, and their Instagram. So again, so again, back when a few months ago when I was really using YouTube a lot, I thought YouTube was a lot bigger, just from my
Right.
use and from everyone around me, because mostly productive people are around me, so they tend to use YouTube a lot more. So I came to the
Hmm.
conclusion YouTube was bigger, but I went down the rabbit hole a few weeks ago. Just again, it was part of investment decision for me. I wanted to add either a Facebook or a Google to my investing portfolio.
Hmm.
So I was trying to make the decision which one is bigger. But however, the pandemic was better for YouTube. YouTube grew the most during this pandemic.
Hmm.
Instagram, I didn't think I grew as much aside from the Instagram shops they introduced. I don't think they grew as much because Instagram's appeal is go out and post what you're doing that you think is cool.
Exactly.
With the pandemic, we couldn't go out. We were stuck indoors. So indoors is YouTube is record creative videos, most likely indoors, and upload. So that's why
Hmm.
YouTube grew so much during the pandemic. So I was asking myself the question, would things go back to normal, or is this the new normal? Or are we going to end up being somewhere in between where we stay inside a lot, but yet we go outside?
Right.
So I don't know if Instagram will keep growing at the pace it has, but however, this pandemic period, YouTube has grown immensely, way more than the growth of Instagram.
Hmm. Yeah, I didn't think of it on all those other points in terms of like, because for sure, like I think the engagement on Instagram is much higher than
Mhm.
YouTube, and like you mentioned, the availability, the possibility for like data collection and all that kind of stuff that it's Facebook, they probably do,
Yeah,
or
definitely.
it's Meta now, they probably
Yeah.
do. So
Mhm.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, because YouTube, the only real data they get from you is what videos you watch and what videos you like. You know,
Hmm.
that's really so. I mean, that gives them a sense of you, um, but Instagram, they get where you are, they get what workouts you're doing, you
Hmm.
just think of the last things you posted on your Instagram story or your Instagram feed or the kind of reels you're watching, all those kind of things. So I think Instagram definitely gets more data about the user than a YouTube
Than
does.
YouTube does. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Makes sense.
But yeah, it was just me going down the rabbit hole trying to figure out what a better investment is.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.